Welcome to another Indy Investor Pod, the podcast where we like to just talk Indy real estate. So everything that's happened here in Indianapolis, this wonderful city. So we talk about neighborhoods, we talk about tools, we talk about things that can just help you in your real estate investing business. I'm really excited to talk to my guest today, Ryan Johnson, as we just get into everything virtual assistants and everything that I know it's helped us out in our business. Hopefully can help you. And with that, let's get on with the show. All right, and welcome back to another Indy Investor Pod. I got Ryan Johnson here with me today, and Ryan Johnson is first of all, just one of the nicest guys that we have here in Indianapolis. I think you're just in the real estate investing space. So every time I talk to this guy, he's got a big smile on his face. He's always willing to help people out, and that's why we got connected with Ryan. We're like, hey, we want some virtual assistants. We need some help with this. And that's what he does. So he has a business. He has a marketing business. He's got a virtual assistant business. He's also always looking at what else is next to do. He's always got something in the cooker. So, but Ryan, thanks a lot for joining me, man.
Hey, man, thanks so much for having me on the show today, Brian.
So, yeah. So, and on the show, that's what we like to do. We like to just help people talk about real estate investing, how they can help themselves here in Indianapolis. And this is going to be a topic that not just Indy investors can use, but investors, all over the nation can kind of just take from and hopefully learn from. Like I said, in kind of the beginning, like I know it's definitely transformed our business and helped us out. So, and that's bringing on virtual assistants to do just, big tasks, little tasks, just things to free up your time and stuff like that. So let's just go ahead and jump right into that so you have, so you basically help connect people with virtual assistants. That's the kind of the business you're running where you're kind of like I said, making that connection and working with some people over in the Philippines. Are you working in any other countries? I know
So primarily in the Philippines, the virtual assistants that I provide for real estate investors are primarily in the Philippines. I do work with virtual assistants in other parts of the world as well, whether it be for graphic design or web development, et cetera. But for real estate, it's primarily the Philippines because it's a much easier transition in terms of language barriers, et cetera.
Awesome. All right. So let's do a quick definition, I guess. When people hear VA or virtual assistant, what does that really mean?
Yep. So a virtual assistant is basically an assistant that does not need to be local, that they can do anything that you need to be done that can be done online. So, I mean, if you think about your real estate business and if you think about all of the activities that occur in your real estate business, a good majority of those activities outside of, actually going to look at the houses and maybe meet with sellers in person, a lot of the activities can be done online, like deal coordination, even talking to sellers on the phone, et cetera. A lot of that stuff can be done online or virtually. And so a virtual assistant is that person that is going to help you do anything that you need to get done, but they are not a local person. They can be located anywhere in the world.
Yeah. So, and I think it's, like I said, you said it could be anywhere in the world. It could be, even a virtual assistant. We've used virtual assistants like here in the United States. So we had a girl that worked for us in Texas. She just wasn't here. She knew all about Indianapolis. She used to live here and stuff like that, but she worked our phones. And it was just like she was live and things. And I know with our business, so we have 8 virtual assistants right now. And I think we have 3 of them through your company. And they're all like, those 3 are like our rock stars. They're like our managers and stuff like that, which is great. But we do everything with our virtual assistants. Do everything from one is our closing coordinator. She handles every single closing we have. She coordinates it. She schedules it all out. She approves the HUDs, like all kinds of stuff like that. So it's stuff that's like pretty high level. Yeah.
Roxanne. Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy. And actually, and Roxanne did that for 2 years, and we kind of promoted her, and she's actually Brett's executive assistant now. But it was kind of funny, and it all kind of came about of Brett and I were having a conversation one day, and he was like, hey, I want you to take over approving these HUDs. He's like, it just, it's every time I look at it, it's 20 minutes out of my day. If I'm doing, 2 or 3 of those every day, like those times just add up. I'm like, I'm in the same point you are. I can't, I don't have time to take an hour each day to do this stuff. But I looked at him, I was like, Roxanne can do this. Like, she's a lot more detail oriented than us.
Yeah.
And then we tasked her with it, and did some training with her. All of a sudden she's pointing out mistakes that I'm making, that Brett's making and stuff. So we knew it was going to be fine from there and things. But that's what, that's one of the things I want to have you on here. When people think of virtual assistants, I think a lot of times they're thinking of just they can comb through a spreadsheet, or maybe they can do the texting for a lead Sherpa or a texting service or cold calling or things like that. But what are some, they can, I think people put limitations on what virtual assistants can really do. When you kind of get into it, let's go through just kind of a little bit of maybe what you're an investor that's maybe just starting with a virtual assistant, like how they can really start with them. Really, what are some of those tasks that a virtual assistant can take on? And then kind of moving forward, when you really get into it and you're developing your business, you're growing your business, you're scaling it, what can they kind of take over and some of those bigger tasks that you've seen maybe virtual assistants take on?
Sure. Okay. So when I think about the role that virtual assistants can play in your business, I think it really depends on where you are and what stage you're at. So I think VAs can either put an exponent on what you're already doing, or they can prevent you from being the bottleneck in your business. So if they're putting an exponent on what you're already doing, let's say that you're already very productive in your business in terms of, your deal flow, et cetera. VAs can come alongside, like even if you already have staff in your business, they can come alongside staff in your business and help take away some of the tasks that they're doing now, whether it's deal coordination, like you were talking about with Roxanne, answering phone calls so that you're not, every time you answer a phone call, it distracts you from what you were doing previously. And so every time you have to reset, eventually that time adds up. And so it's inevitable that you're going to be less productive. And so VAs take that stuff off your plate. So now you've got more time to talk to, buyers and sellers, or put together JV deals, et cetera. Also, they can run comps, screen sellers, take care of bills. So, one of the things that I've done in my business, and people don't realize just how much time you spend on a monthly basis just taking care of tedious things like bills. And so, once you get to a place where you actually have some rapport and trust your VA, you can create designated accounts where they're taking care of your bills on a monthly basis. And even, responding to emails. So part of this is, as you continue to trust your VA and they grow with you, you can add additional responsibilities to those VAs, because they really want to grow too. They want to grow in your business, and the more that you give them those opportunities and that autonomy, you're going to see great results. And so I think it's only when you pigeonhole a VA to do just a spreadsheet or something to that nature, then, it's like garbage in, garbage out. But if you put trust and that work in, then you're going to get good results, and they're going to step up for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point right there. Of just like, they want to they want to be a part of your business. I think it's, depending on what kind of culture you have, if you're including them in your, some of your meetings and keeping them in the know and actually treating them like as part of your team, like they want to grow with you. They want to help you. Like our dispo assistant, like when she gets on and she gets our spreadsheet, when we sell a property, it changes the red. Like that's her favorite thing. She's like, oh yeah, it's a red property. I get to take it off the MLS. I get to take it off the website. Like she gets really excited about that. But also when she's not at full capacity, like she'll send me an email on a Thursday and be like, hey, I kind of had a slow day today. Like what other tasks do you have me to do? Like she wants to take some more stuff on, which is really cool. And I think it's just part of, like I said, kind of bringing them into your culture, letting them be involved in stuff, but not just saying like, hey, I just want you to keep up to date on the spreadsheet and that's it. And I'll talk to you like once a week for 10 minutes just to check in on you and hold you accountable. But like actually interacting with them and stuff is pretty neat and stuff. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about kind of just like, so when I know you talked a little bit about, when you are looking for a VA and you need to onboard them, or even before that, I guess, with the interview process. Mm-hmm. So how do you handle, or, we can talk about how you handle it within your business, but then also what are some tips that people need to be aware of? Somebody like me that I want to bring on a VA, like what do I need to pay attention to during that interview process, or even making sure that I do interview more than one person or whatever?
Okay. So the process that we use when we are providing virtual assistants, the first thing that we'll do is we'll have a conversation with you and find out a little bit more about your business and what you are actually looking for a virtual assistant to do. Some people, they're looking for someone to do more deal coordination or what have you. Some people might want some other admin type tasks. Some people want somebody to answer the phone. So we try to get a feel for what exactly you're looking for that virtual assistant to do. And then based on that criteria that you provide, we'll go back and look at our talent pool of VAs and see who would be the best fit based on the criteria that you provided. And then we send over resumes of those top candidates that we think would be a good fit. And we allow you to look through the resumes, determine who you would like to interview, and then we coordinate the interviews in order to, because I think it's extremely important when you're hiring a virtual assistant to have a conversation with that virtual assistant and make sure that there's a good yin and yang. Make sure that there's a good, feel for that VA, and that there's good communication. And so we typically ask you to pick out your top 2 or 3 from the resumes we send over. Like I said, we'll coordinate the interviews, and then after the interviews, you let us know who you like to go with, and then from there we set up an onboarding call. So that's the process that we use in our company. For people that are hiring outside of our company, let's say that they're going on an Upwork or a site like that. I would say that one of the biggest tips that I can give is to make sure that you are somewhat specific in what you are looking to get done. Because what happens with some folks is they throw everything in the kitchen sink into a description. And what's going to happen is you're going to get somebody that's trying to be a jack of all trades, and typically those are not the best VAs. They might look like superheroes on paper, but usually they're not really. They're not going to give you the best results. So I would say be pretty specific in your job posting in terms of the types of tasks that you want, and don't make it so broad. Like somebody that's going to be your bookkeeper is probably not going to also be like your graphic designer, So, rein it in a bit. If you've got to hire multiple VAs, do that, but try to avoid the jack of all trades downfall.
Yeah, that's a really good tip right there. And I know I get one of the most common questions I get when it comes to whether it's hiring people like here locally to be on my team, or if it's a virtual assistant. One of the most common questions I get is like, how do I know what to give them? Like, how do I know what to hire for and things? I think it's different for every person. What Ryan might need a virtual assistant for is going to be different than what I do, than what Brett does, or anything like that. But really, it's looking at where do you spend your time? What takes up the most part of your time, and then 2 other things. What are you not good at doing, and what do you not like doing?
Absolutely.
So when you get things that if it's a time sucker, if it's something that you're not that great at or you're not passionate about, like that's the thing that you want to hire for. That's what you want to look for. So I think that's really important. Yeah.
And actually one of the things that I'll tell people if they're struggling with trying to figure that out, what I'll tell them to do is document what you do for like the next week or 2. Document everything that you do. Whether it's on the business side or the personal side, like if you're making reservations for a restaurant, or if you're making, whatever it is, document all of these things, right? In Evernote or whatever note-taking app that you're using. And then as you're documenting these over the next week or 2, you're going to see that you do a lot of stuff that you could actually hand off. And there's a lot of stuff that we do that is not the highest and best use of our time. And so those are the perfect things to hand off to a virtual assistant.
Yeah, 100%. That's so true. I did the same thing just 2 weeks ago. I sat down and just kind of looked at, like, I just time myself on how much time I spend on social media, just doing posts for our company. And it realized, like, all of a sudden it's 2 hours out of my week. Well, if I can free that up, that's a lot of time. I can be analyzing deals. I can be, doing podcasts, networking, any of those things. So it definitely frees up some time for me. But yeah, really good tip. So what do you say to those people that are like, I don't know if I can spend like an extra, $1,000 or $1,500 a month. I don't know if I can afford a virtual assistant. Like, I laugh at that now when I hear that, but so what do you say to people like that, man?
Man, so I think that the number one thing that people need to know is, what is your time worth? And so I think that the downfall of folks that think that they can't afford a virtual assistant is that they don't know what their time is worth. So, put it in perspective. If let's say your average wholesale deal is worth $5,000, and if a VA is going to help you get one more deal done in a month, either because they freed up more of your time, or they've allowed you to be more productive because of the things that they're doing in your business, deal coordination, et cetera, then if you are paying a virtual assistant $1,000 a month and they're allowing you to get, an extra deal, just one deal done, I mean, that math, it's simple math, right? I mean, and not only, one of the objections that I hear is money, because people don't know what their time is worth. But the other thing is people say, I don't know how I would keep a VA busy for 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week, or 20 hours a week, whatever amount of time you decide. That comes back down to ROI and math as well. So like if a virtual assistant is helping you get an additional deal done a month, why does it matter if you keep them busy 30 hours versus 40 hours? It just all comes down to math and return on investment. And so I think that when you get to the point where you stop jumping over dollars in order to save pennies, then your business grows and you realize, okay, virtual assistant makes sense in my business. I know what my time is worth. I know I don't need to micromanage, and I know that they're going to allow me to be this much more productive and get more deals done.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. I like that. I'm not putting dollars over pennies. I like that. That's good. So, no, and I know, one of the other questions, or like one of the other tips I kind of like to do, and I like to talk about too, is make sure that I think when we can kind of get into the interview or like the training and stuff like that. Whenever I'm talking to a virtual assistant, I always make sure I ask them hey, what's the best way that you learn, or what's the, what way do you learn the best? Mm-hmm. Do you need one-on-one training, or are you okay watching a video and going from there? Because there's some tasks that I need to do. I know it needs to be a one-on-one thing, so I need to make sure that they're okay learning that way. But there's other things that hey, I just need somebody that can watch a video and figure it out and just ask questions. Sure. So I think that's a really good kind of an important thing there. But what are some other maybe tips that you have for when you're onboarding a virtual assistant and you're just kind of going through that training process of kind of getting them up to speed? I know there's a little thing I've learned, kind of maybe only give them one or two tasks at a time, make sure they master that, and then kind of add, they get more comfortable, then you can add more stuff on them versus giving them hey, here's 10 things that I want you to master in the next month or whatever it is. Right. But what are some other tips you have when it comes to training virtual assistants?
So I would say one of the most important time periods when you're bringing aboard a virtual assistant is at the very beginning, and how you bring them aboard in terms of having some basic systems in place. So, when you bring aboard a virtual assistant, it's important to have some basic systems in place, or some SOPs or standard operating procedures, because it's going to take you a long way. It's going to make the onboarding process that much easier. And it's going to also ensure that you have better outcomes in terms of the work that they provide, because you've managed the expectation in your SOP or standard operating procedure, and they know exactly what you want done. And it also, using SOPs, they reduce the likelihood of frustration from both the person that's hiring the virtual assistant and the virtual assistant. So an example would be, if you like comps run a certain way, or deal coordination, then you need to write out step by step what it is that, and you write it out almost like you were trying to explain it to a fifth grader. And this is not knocking anybody, but because they're very intelligent, but you need to, when you write things out like you're writing for a fifth grader, it means that you're going to go into more detail, and you're not going to take things for granted that you just know like the back of your head, right? Yeah. Or back of your hand. And the other thing is, SOPs don't need to be written necessarily, like you were just mentioning. It could be a video. Mm-hmm. And so, it depends on how people learn better. And I think the advantage of creating these SOPs is once you put that work in once, it's done, and you can create this library of standard operating procedures. So then when let's say you bring aboard another VA or what have you, then you can have this reference point for them to use in order to go through those processes. And so like a couple of tools that I like to recommend, free tools, would be you can set up your SOPs in Google Docs, just label whatever that procedure is going to be and write it out step by step. Or one of the tools I really love is Loom. So loom.com. And so that's a free tool. Click a button in the top of your browser anytime that you want to explain something that's on your screen. It makes a video, you get a link, and then you have a library of Loom videos, which you can refer somebody to, and you can index those videos, so it's very easy to organize that. So, I think that time that you put in the beginning, in order to onboard somebody and show them the procedures, which is typically why some people have resistance of bringing on a VA because they don't think they're going to have time in order to hire them. You spend that time at the beginning, man, it pays dividends over and over and over again. So you just got to remember that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So
Right.
put that time in at the beginning and it's going to pay dividends.
Oh yeah. And just going back to, that's like the perfect job for a virtual assistant too. Like I give out the video and let them watch the video and write
Yes.
out the SOPs,
Yeah,
so they can do that and put it in
absolutely,
there.
man. Spot on.
So that's great. What are, so we're talking with Ryan Johnson here from Better Your Best. That's his company that they do the virtual assistants, and he does some marketing stuff on the side. And we'll give him a chance to talk about that a little bit later, but a couple more just questions about virtual assistants. What are maybe some like don'ts that you've kind of seen, maybe some of the, business owners when they take on a virtual assistant, they're just like, man, it just didn't work out, or like you just kind of hear about the story and you're like, ah, man, you just cringe because it's going to happen maybe, or something like that.
So going back to what we were talking about earlier, one of the don'ts is making a virtual assistant a jack of all trades. So, I mentioned why that's a don't. If you've got your bookkeeper also being your graphic designer, you're going to run into some roadblocks. I would say another don't that you'll find, especially when some people that don't that they have problems with letting go, is they will micromanage. And so what I say to that is you got to remember why you hired a virtual assistant in the first place. So you hired a virtual assistant in order to save time and to get more done. But when you micromanage, you've actually just created another job for yourself. So, it comes back down to remembering the reason that you hired a virtual assistant in the first place, and making sure that you give them some autonomy after you've taken the time to train them. Give them some autonomy, give them an opportunity to grow. And like you were mentioning before, you give them a few tasks, see how they do with those tasks, and eventually add additional responsibility. But at all costs, avoid micromanaging because it's counterproductive to the reason that you hired a VA.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to throw this, and this might be a don't, I don't know. I'm going to throw this at you because this is kind of how we have looked at it, and I've given this advice before. So, but I'll go straight to the source and ask you if this makes sense or anything. But
Right.
so I know that, virtual assistants, like we've brought some virtual assistants onto our team, and like after, a couple of days or a week, we're like, hey, this isn't going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've kind of been under the impression of like, hey, it's okay to just kind of like cut them right then and there, because there's another job that they're able to go to another job, and basically like somebody else needs their skill set, how they need to work. And there's also somebody else that can fill that in pretty quick. So we've been a little like quick to fire, I guess, when it comes to virtual assistants. Is that an okay thing, or is that like, I give them more of a chance? Like, how do you feel about that?
So that's a great question. So it's something that I always say is hire slow and fire fast, right? So hire slow, meaning, when you are in that initial process of bringing aboard a VA or thinking about a VA, you need to make sure that, this is a good fit, right? But if a VA is on your team and you realize, hey, this is not going to be a good fit, or this person is going to be a cancer to the organization, or whatever the case may be, I tend not to prolong things either. It's one thing if it's impatience on our end, right? In terms of the whole training process, that's a different thing. It's another thing if you see that, hey, this VA it's not going to be a good fit for what we got going on. So yeah, I'm a proponent of hire slow, fire fast, man. And so I understand where you're coming from, Brian.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good advice. I think it's good advice, whether it's a virtual assistant or you're bringing somebody on the team. Is there, can you do a trial period or any of that stuff? It's just, really seeing what people can do. Cause, like you said too, there's somebody people can look really good on paper or on a resume and stuff like that. But once you get them involved and kind of go through that, make sure one of the lessons I've learned too is like, if you set aside, a half hour or an hour to interview somebody, spend that half hour, that whole hour interviewing that person to really dig into and get to know, like take advantage of that versus, a 5-minute conversation of like, oh, she's so nice and she's bubbly. Yep. She's what I want. So, but actually taking, asking those questions, having that stuff planned out, knowing those interview questions that you really need to, and even bringing a third party on to even do that interview or that hiring process for you if you need to, if that's something that you're not great at. So
Sure.
So no, really good stuff, Ryan. Really appreciate you joining me today and stuff. But I know I want to give you a little bit of time to kind of plug yourself and what you guys are doing and what you have. I know you were showing me before we even jumped on here, just kind of you have a training program of like, hey, if you're a CEO, like how do you bring on a virtual assistant, which I think is awesome. I think it looks really cool, really good stuff in there. But I also knew you're doing some of the part of the better your best business is marketing as well. So let me give you a chance to just kind of plug yourself and talk about what you're doing, man.
Sure. So yeah, the name of my company is Better Your Best Marketing. So betteryourbestmarketing.com. And so basically what we do is we help folks create sales funnels or marketing funnels that help them attract and convert leads into customers, into Raven fans. So that's basically what we do. So we build out marketing funnels for them. Then, obviously we also provide virtual assistant services. The site for our virtual assistant services is betteryourbestmarketing.com/real VA. And the course that I was showing you at the beginning of the show, just like we're having this discussion now, a lot of folks, they're intimidated about bringing aboard a virtual assistant, or they would like to have a blueprint of, okay, if I bring a virtual assistant aboard, then how do I train them? How do I manage them? What tools should I use? What should I expect? How can I avoid these pitfalls? How can I optimize my business? And so I've put together a course called the Virtual CEO Academy that basically goes from A to Z, everything that you would possibly need to know in order to hire a virtual assistant. And I even tried to include SOPs or standard operating procedures for a lot of the real estate related tasks that you might need in your business, so that you don't have to come up with those from scratch. You can just take the blueprints from the course. You can plug them into whatever task management software that you use, and I talk about that in the course too. And then you can allow your virtual assistant to follow those. So hopefully it provides a lot of value to the folks that get the course.
Oh, I think for sure. I think it looks awesome, man. So I know, and that's one of the big thing too, is I need to mention here, we didn't really talk about this, but no matter what you're doing in real estate or really business in general, I would say too, you can use virtual assistants. So I know people might say like, oh, Brian, you guys have you have 8 virtual assistants, but you're a wholesaler. So how am I going to use this if I'm a flipper? You can, any of this stuff, you can use it if you're a flipper, buy and hold investor, like property manager, like all this stuff. So don't like limit yourself of like, oh, I'm only doing this, or Brian's talking about this, or anything. Like it's across the board. So I think it's really important. I know you have those SOPs in there too for just all different types of real estate investing, which is awesome. So so Ryan, thanks a lot for joining me, man. Really great information. I thought this was a great podcast. Something that can definitely, people can take this and implement it tomorrow and kind of go with this. And if you're on the fence of like, hey, do I need a virtual assistant, or I don't know whether I should pay for him? I think you heard it from Ryan Johnson, the man. It's like, just do it. It can help you out.
Do it, man.
There it is. So, Ryan, what's the best way? I know you mentioned your website that they could go to. What's another way that they can maybe reach out to you or get in touch with you if they have any questions?
Sure. They can reach out to me directly at my email address, ryan@betteryourbestmarketing.com. So they can find me there. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that folks have about virtual assistants. I've had VAs in my business since 2008, man, and it's been a blessing. So I'd be happy to help anybody that's got questions.
Awesome stuff. Really appreciate you and appreciate your business and what you do, man. So if you have any questions for me, or if I can help out in any way, you can feel free to reach out to me at brian@simplewholesaling.com, or reach out to me on social media. Love to connect with you if I'm not yet. So thanks a lot. And this has been another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. Take care.